today and tomorrow. So we have two events today. First, we'll have our event now on the reconstruction of Mykolaiv, and then later today we'll have an event on the temporarily occupied territories, about Russian mass subversion of occupied territories. And then remember, tomorrow we have an event in the morning on lessons from the war and prospects for the war, and then later tomorrow we have a final event on the wider security developments in and around Ukraine. So welcome, my name is Flemming Splidsbol, and I'm senior researcher here at DIIS, and it's my pleasure to host these events and to moderate these events. And in a few minutes we'll start our event on Mykolaiv, the reconstruction of Mykolaiv, which is a high-profile case for Denmark. And with this event we try to generate some interest and some understanding for the development and for the engagement of Denmark in Mykolaiv in particular. And we have three speakers today. We have the Danish ambassador to Ukraine, Ole Ebjerg Mikkelsen, who is in Kyiv, and he'll be joining us online in a moment. Then we will go to Mykolaiv after this, and we have Jakob Toril Hansen, who has just joined the team, and he's in Mykolaiv, and he heads now the Danish Embassy office in Mykolaiv. So as a sign of the Danish engagement and commitment to the reconstruction of Mykolaiv, we've decided to set up a separate embassy office in Mykolaiv. And so we'll go to Mykolaiv, and Jakob will be joining us online. And then finally, in the room today, we have our third speaker, Jesper Kau Petersen, who's with COVI, who has an extensive experience in working in different areas of the world. Now it's Ukraine, and Jesper is engaged also in Mykolaiv and has offered very generously to share some of his insights from the reconstruction work and the projects. And I've listened to Jesper speak about this topic before. And to be honest, I was surprised to learn just how much is actually going on. So I look forward to hearing more about this and learning more about this today also. We'll have a regular seminar session now, which means that we will have plenty of time for questions and answers also. But we'll go initially to Kyiv to listen to the ambassador. The ambassador will give us a presentation of the overall framework for the work that we are doing in Mykolaiv, and then we'll have an opportunity to ask questions to the ambassador afterwards. So, Mr. Ambassador, are you with us? Not yet. We are rushing to establish connection. It's like the Eurovision. So.
We can hear you. But,
we can hear Kyiv now. Kyiv, are you with us?
And I've unmuted my microphone, so I hope that I'm audible.
Yes, we see you and we hear you also. So please, Mr. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. I hope that there's both video and sound coming through to Copenhagen and to Mykolaiv and whoever is following this online. And first of all, thank you, Flemming, and the Danish Institute for International Studies for setting the Denmark-Mykolaiv partnership on the agenda for your seminar this morning. This patronage is really unique, and it's also a success story, and it has attracted immense international attention and a lot of attention here in Ukraine. I can tell you that whenever there are delegations visiting Ukraine, focusing on reconstruction, they all want to hear about this partnership because nobody else has done anything comparable. And this is not just words. I want to show you an article that was published. I hope it's you can see it. It's an American online media called the Washington Monthly that just on Tuesday, I think, this week published this very nice article about the Mykolaiv partnership. It's published under the headline "Beacons of Hope for the Ukrainian Economy." As donors and investors gather this week in Berlin, you know, there's the the Ukraine Recovery Conference. All eyes are on helping the besieged nation. In Mykolaiv, near the Black Sea, the Danish government assists by jumpstarting local businesses and fighting corruption, and helping Ukraine shake off its Soviet economic legacy. So this is not something that is of interest in Ukraine. It's something that is interest internationally. And I can tell you that many mayors, many governors in Ukraine are following this very, very closely. I was in the city of Kyiv just 3 weeks ago, and I met with the mayor, and he asked me the question rhetorically: "Where's my Denmark? Where's our partner? Who can help the city of Kyiv as you have been helping the city of Mykolaiv?" So this is what I'm going to do this morning. I'm going to give you, as Flemming said, the overall background. Why are we engaged in Mykolaiv? How did this happen? And Jakob, my good colleague, speaking to you also from the Danish Embassy, because the office we have in Mykolaiv is an integrated part of the embassy. It's something that is possible under the Vienna Convention. In exceptional circumstances, the host nation can allow a state to have embassy offices outside the capital, and this is the legal basis for what we're doing in Mykolaiv and the embassy office under Jakob's leadership. Now, how did this happen? You probably know, many of you, that this was something that was suggested by President Zelensky when he spoke online to the Danish Parliament on the 29th of March 2022. And this was one of the darkest moments during the Russian aggression. The Russians were at the gates of the city. They had conquered, as you know, a neighboring Kherson, and they were just at the gates of Mykolaiv, and the city was defending itself and managed to keep the Russians at bay. But on the 29th of March, on the very same day as President Zelensky was supposed to address the Danish Parliament, the regional administrative building in Mykolaiv was attacked by the Russians. They fired several missiles, and you probably all remember this. Is actually coming back to this article. You probably remember this sickening photo of the regional administrative building that was hit right in the middle, and sadly 40 people died. It was obviously an attempt to kill the military governor, Vitaly Kim. He was delayed that morning, so he arrived after the attack, but sadly he lost his entire team. Later on that day, President Zelensky spoke to the Danish Parliament, and in his speech he suggested that Denmark should assume the patronage of the city of Mykolaiv, and he added, "We call it the city of shipbuilders." And when he said that, I knew exactly why he had suggested Denmark for this task, because we have had a maritime project in Mykolaiv prior to the full-scale Russian attack. Our defense attaché at that time, Felix Eberstad, who's a naval officer, had gotten the bright idea to combine Danish maritime technology with the infrastructure present in Mykolaiv. And Mykolaiv is indeed the city of shipbuilders, because during Soviet times, this was the center for shipbuilding in the Soviet Union, both civilian and naval ships. Right, I'm giving a sign by my colleague Natalia that I've already spoken 5 minutes. So, and Flemming, please let me know when it's time for me to stop. But just to give the background, this was how it happened, and I think it's fair to say that this was not a suggestion that was met with, at least not in the beginning, with great enthusiasm in Copenhagen, because it's not the way we are normally doing reconstruction. There were voices saying that this would be very risky. There was a war at the gates of the city. The Russians were there. It was under daily shelling, and I can tell you in 2022, things were very, very difficult in Mykolaiv. And there was also voices saying it's better to do this kind of reconstruction efforts through a multilateral institution, or through the UN system, or the World Bank, the EBRD, or the European Union, because that gives an arm's length. You don't have to deal directly with local authorities, and you isolate yourself from the risk of corruption, for instance. And there were also voices saying that this would be against the humanitarian principles, where you look at the entire country and see where are the biggest needs, what if needs were bigger elsewhere. So there were many arguments against doing this, not only in the Danish context, but also among donors in general, because this is not the way we normally do it. But what happened was that the Danish Prime Minister came to Kyiv just a couple of weeks after the speech of President Zelensky, and she decided, and the government decided to move along with this. And I still remember the press conference. I think it was expressed that we will assume the patronage of Mykolaiv, and normally we don't do this kind of thing, but it's not normal to have a war raging in the heart of Europe, so we have to do it. And we have not tried it before, we don't know how to do it, but we'll find out. And this was basically the point of departure, and a lot of activities followed immediately after in a close cooperation with the Danish Foreign Ministry, Danish humanitarian organizations, international organizations, and not least the local and regional authorities who were on the spot. And the biggest need in the very beginning was to make the city ready for the winter, because this was still the spring of 22, but everybody knew that the city would not be able to survive the winter unless it was being winterized. There was no windows left in the entire city because of the shelling. So enormous quantities of plywood and particle boards was procured through international organizations, and there was no water, drinking water, because the Russians had cut off the water supply from neighboring Kherson. So there was basically only technical water for toilets and but not for drinking. So it was clear that unless drinking water would be supplied and the windows would be sealed off, and the central heating system, the district heating system would be restored, the city would not be able to survive the winter, and people would leave. And it's a city of 490,000 inhabitants, so it's a big city. So this was what happened in the very beginning, and it went well. There was a seamless cooperation between all the both international and Ukrainian stakeholders, and the city actually was actually ready for the winter, and about 80 emergency water stations were established to make it possible for people to bring their water bottles to the local neighborhood water station and get the drinking water. And this is actually how drinking water is still supplied this very day, because it will take some time to restore the water supply in its original form. One of the I should mention that in January 23, our Prime Minister, accompanied by the Defense Minister at that time, and the Foreign Minister, came to Mykolaiv, and they met with President Zelensky and a Ukrainian government delegation, and they were happy about what they saw, because they could see that this has actually worked. And they agreed that the next phase would focus on rebuilding and reconstructing physical and social infrastructure, and not least to help bringing enterprises back in business, because this is a very enterprising city. These are proud people. They don't want to be dependent on charity, on aid. They know this will end at some point. So the biggest wish they had, and this was clearly expressed during their visit, was to help businesses getting back in operation. And one of the industrialists we met on that occasion, we called him the tomato guy, because he's running the tomato industry, which is very important. He said, "I'm ready to restart my enterprises." He's running 3 tomato processing plants, but nobody will lend me money to repair my equipment, because I'm too close to the front line. So Denmark had to establish within the Danish Ukraine Fund a private sector window that makes it possible for IFU, the Danish Export Credit and Investment Agency, to issue loans and guarantees to companies, even if they are on the front line. Nobody else can do that. Now it's coming slowly, but at that time, nobody wanted to do it. It was simply too risky. And this has actually worked. The tomato processing is back in operation, and whenever I go to Mykolaiv, I visit a small community called Snihurivka, and in Snihurivka, one of the plants are located, and I'm always very happy to see how people are coming back. I can see that there are cars outside the small houses. there are women with small kids, and the school has reopened. So this is a sign that by creating jobs, but by creating economic activities, you can also supply, you can also support the local communities, because then people start paying taxes. And this is what we are trying to do. We're also focusing a lot on restarting educational institutions. This is a strong wish expressed by the president, because the demographic balance in the city is not good. There are too many elderly people, that too few young people. Young people can travel to Odessa, to Kyiv, to Copenhagen, or wherever. But it's a strong wish, both at the central level, but also at the local level, to have the educational institutions restarted. And we have helped getting the agricultural university back in operation. And we are focusing now on raising money for the University of Shipbuilders, because that's one of the that's part of the DNA of the city, and it goes well together with the maritime industry in the city. So this is what we're doing, and Jakob will get back in a more detailed form on what we're doing. And basically, we're doing everything, not only physical reconstruction, we're also doing cultural events. Just 2 weeks ago, there was a children's cultural festival. We have had bicycle rides in the city, because we want to do something that is away from war, that is away from conflict, that makes people think of other things than just the immediate future. And this has also been a success. So sometimes I'm saying that we're doing everything from garbage trucks to children's culture, because garbage trucks is also an important part of running a city. There were no garbage trucks basically left, and you cannot have a major city without garbage collection. So all these very fundamental things are part of what we're doing. But what about corruption? Because this is an issue in Ukraine, as you know, and this was, of course, the great worry when all this started. How was this? Would there be a corruption case that would have a devastating impact on the support in the Danish public? And I know that from the Danish members of parliament, the lawmakers and ministers who are coming here very frequently. This is the first question they're asking: what about corruption? So we have done a lot to mitigate the risk of corruption. First of all procurement is being done through international organizations, primarily the UN procurement agency located in Copenhagen called UNOPS, but also IOM and other UN organizations. And secondly, the city of Mykolaiv is part of what is called the Integrity Cities. Denmark is implementing the European Anti-Corruption Program, and that program has adopted a number of cities that are called integrity cities, that have particularly high standards in terms of integrity. And this is being implemented in Mykolaiv. There's actually an anti-corruption advisor placed next to the mayor, sitting just next door, and I know that she's being consulted very frequently. And thirdly, to ensure transparency, we have established a joint Ukrainian-Danish steering committee, and this was what I suggested from the very beginning, to make sure that all stakeholders are involved, because this is about money, this is about resources. So we want to make sure that both the city and the entire region, but also the central and governmental offices, are in agreement of what is happening there. So to ensure this kind of transparency, there is a steering committee. It's headed by the Danish Minister for Development Cooperation, Dan Jørgensen, and until recently, his Ukrainian counterpart, who is now no longer in office, Vice Deputy Prime Minister Kubakov, but we expect a successor to be appointed recently and to be appointed soon. And this steering committee is the clearinghouse. This is where all the projects that are being proposed by either the municipality, the region, or the Ministry of Reconstruction are being cleared, so everybody are on the same page, and this has worked well. And then fourthly, we have established this embassy office headed by Jakob in Mykolaiv to ensure that we have oversight and good contact with the local stakeholders. It's a long journey here from Kyiv. It's 600 kilometers, so it's not it's a long drive or a long train ride, so we cannot go there every day. But now we have Jakob and his team on the ground, and they are also providing oversight. So all in all, I think the partnership has been working surprisingly well. As the Prime Minister said from the very beginning, we have not tried this before, but we'll find out. And we did that by trial and error, by moving step by step. There was not a big plan. There are some donors saying, look, before we can do any kind of serious reconstruction, there need to be peace. And then we need a big plan, and we need to have consultants who can draft a detailed plan for what is going to happen. This is not what we did here. We did it incrementally. We did it by consulting local authorities, regional authorities, and this is probably where there is kind of there are different cultures. I think many colleagues and many institutions who have been doing reconstruction and recovery, they've been doing that in weak states. They've been doing that in non-European settings, in nations with very weak institutions. But this is a country with pretty strong institutions. The mayors are elected. They were elected in 2020. The municipalities are working well. That's also what we see in Mykolaiv, and we can do a lot with them that would probably not be possible in states with a weaker regional setup. And it's a European country with strong European values. I'm not saying that everything is perfect. There's corruption. There are many issues, but by and large, this is a European nation that is not so different from what we know in Western Europe and in Denmark. And this is probably what made it difficult in the beginning to accept this notion of a partnership, a regional partnership, because this is not the way we normally do it. What about other countries? Well, there are a number of countries that have expressed interest. The Ukrainian government is very keen on having other countries to assume a similar role, because this is something that brings, as we've seen in Mykolaiv, tangible and very concrete results. France has assumed the patronage for the northern city called Kyiv, and some of the Baltic states have also assumed roles, but mainly in Western Ukraine, not in frontline cities like Mykolaiv. And I think there is this, for this kind of unusual thing to happen, it requires strong political leadership, and this was what we saw in the Danish context. It was simply decided that we do it, and then we would have to find out how to do it. And this is what we have been trying ever since. So let me conclude by mentioning one of my first encounters with the very dynamic mayor of Mykolaiv, Mayor Kyiv, who's actually in Denmark these days. I think he will be on the island of Bornholm tomorrow. And I asked him, why are you so keen on having Denmark as your patron? And he said, look, I want my city, the city of Mykolaiv, to become a small Denmark on the Black Sea, just as affluent, just as green, just as innovative, and just as people-friendly. And this thing about Denmark as a people-friendly nation is something that we Danes, we tend to forget that, but that's something that is well known in Ukraine. And just to give an example, the mayor is very keen on establishing a bicycle infrastructure, and a Danish urban planner has actually made this plan for Mykolaiv bicycle strategy. It will take some time before it can be implemented, but it is an example of how this kind of partnership also mobilizes a lot of resources in the Danish context. Mykolaiv is now the sister city of the city of Aalborg. The two cities are quite many similarities, and I've had the experience over the last couple of years that having this partnership makes it much easier to mobilize public and private support in Denmark. So we're working on making Mykolaiv a small Denmark on the Black Sea. It will take some time, but I think that the city and its inhabitants, they have shown that they could defeat the Russians, they could stop the Russian aggression at the gates of the city, and I think that they will be just as keen on making their city a small Denmark. So, what was the timing? 21. I better stop here and back to you in Copenhagen, unless I should simply ask Jakob to take over. Up to you, Flemming.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for for this excellent overview of the activities. Before we go to Jakob, let me just turn to the audience and see if there's maybe one question or two questions specifically for you at this point. Would anyone like to ask a question at this point? We have one question here. Just hang on a second. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Very good presentation, I think. My name is Jesper Krag Petersen, Kovi. I have one question, Ole. You mentioned Chernihiv, and you mentioned in that connection that France is working in Chernihiv to some extent the same way as we, as Denmark, is working in Mykolaiv. What about other EU member states or other countries? Are you aware of that? Are they working actually? I know there are some agreements signed, for example, Greece and Odessa, but do you know about similar partnerships that we see in Mykolaiv and in Chernihiv? What about UK? What about Germany? What about other EU member states?
Well, yes, indeed, there are a number of partnerships, as you were mentioning, and I mentioned the French role in Chernihiv, and I'm also aware that the Italians will do something to restore the cultural buildings in Odessa that have been destroyed. But I think what distinguishes our partnership with any other partnership is that ours is comprehensive. It's not only the city of Mykolaiv, it's the entire oblast. It's an oblast of more than 1 million inhabitants. So it's a huge area. It's a huge responsibility, and of course, this is also what makes it risky. Because one day people would say, "Okay, what did the Danes do? Was this sufficient?" The bigger plate you have before you, the bigger the risk is that something will go wrong. I can tell you. That among my colleagues here, the EU ambassadors, many of them have been advocating that their countries should assume the patronage for other regions or cities, but they have not managed. And as I said, I think it requires strong political leadership. Somebody will have to say, "Okay, we're going to do it." We normally we don't do this. We've never done this before. We don't know how to do it. It's risky, but somebody will have to say, "We're going to do it." And this is. What happened in our case, it's perhaps easier to have a thematic partnership on cultural buildings because that's not so contested. This thing about going all in as Denmark has been doing, I think, is unique, and it's still unique, and it's not without risk. There are, and there's also a risk of criticism. What about other cities? What about cities and regions that do not have this kind of dynamic political leadership? We're blessed in Mykolaiv with having a very strong trio of mayor, the military governor, Vitaly Kyiv, who many of you will know, who became a hero in Ukraine for the defense of Mykolaiv, and then the elected chairman of the regional council. They work very well together, and we can feel that in the steering committee. But that's not necessarily the case in all the regions. So we've been lucky having a very good partnership. Right.
Great, thank you. Do we have another question? No? I think everything was perfectly clear from your presentation, so let's go instead to Jakob Toril Hansen. And before we go to Jakob, let me just say that he just took up this position. Very interesting, important work. Congratulations, of course, on that. And we look forward to following you in your new position in Mykolaiv. So, Jakob, please, over to you.
Yeah, hello everyone. Can you hear me, see me?
We do, yes.
Good. Yes, my name is Jakob. I'm the head of the embassy office, Danish Embassy office in Mykolaiv. I've been in that position for 2 weeks. Before then, I was the military attaché, one of the military attachés in Kyiv. And I believe we have in the audience, so I can't see you or hear you, but I think there are people from the National Defense University in the audience with whom we worked and still work quite closely. So, усім привіт. Yes, so I've been in this position for 2 weeks. We have in the office, apart from me, I have 5 local Ukrainian colleagues, all from Mykolaiv, and our main job is to monitor donations that are being made and maintain a very close contact with the city council, both the city council and the regional military administration, which are both sitting just on the other side of the street. I thought perhaps that it would make sense to just show a map of Mykolaiv, showing where it's situated. So I thought I'd just share my screen and then move to this. Can you see the deep state map now on the screen? Fleming, could you please confirm that you can see my screen?
We see it, yes. Yes, we do.
Good.
Yeah.
So just to make sure that everybody understand where exactly we're situated. This is Ukraine. Probably a lot of you know this resource deep state map. And this is Mykolaiv, which is an interesting city built in 1789 or founded in 1789 by no other than Prince Potemkin, and was thought to be the center of the at that time Russian Empire fleet and a shipbuilding center. And it's very much still in the sort of the whole idea about the city is that this is a place for shipbuilding, and in particular for military shipbuilding. It's very much in the genes and of the DNA, in the DNA of the city. And interestingly enough, a number of the ships that are currently in the Russian fleet, such as Admiral Kuznetsov and Admiral Makarov and others, they were actually built in Mykolaiv back in the 80s, which creates an interesting dynamic when we see that the Ukrainian armed forces are heavily targeting them in the Black Sea. So you're probably familiar with this resource, but the green areas are the areas that were liberated. Most of these were liberated already in 22, but it is clearly seen that Mykolaiv was almost encircled at the beginning of the invasion, and actually the Russian forces went all the way to Voznesensk, which is to the far north of Mykolaiv. As we can see, they actually never went into the Mykolaiv proper. They sort of made a turn around and went further north, possibly to go to Yuzhno-Ukrainsk, where the major nuclear power facility in Mykolaiv Oblast is situated. But they were stopped here, pushed back, and I think it was 11th of November 22, the Ukrainian forces, they liberated Kherson, the city, not the oblast entirely, but the city, and thereby brought Mykolaiv on a more safe distance from the Russian forces. Mykolaiv is still being targeted once in a while with missiles and drones, but it is clearly no longer a priority to the Russian forces as it was at the beginning of the invasion. Now, as you may follow, most of the attacks they go either towards Odessa or further to the north, Zaporizhzhia, Dnipro, and other cities. Just to explain what we're doing in Mykolaiv, as the ambassador just said, the main decisions about how we are spending our money in Mykolaiv is made on the steering committee level by the deputy prime minister, who used to be Kubrakov, and our Minister of Development Cooperation. And the steering committee meets regularly, between every 3 and 6 months, and decides what is the direction, where we're heading with our support for Mykolaiv. Our support has been taking place, I think you can say, in 3 stages. So when we began in 22, the main focus were emergency packages and focusing on winterization, especially because at that point many buildings in Mykolaiv were substantially damaged, and they required a winterization to be able to sustain them throughout the winter. So it is interesting to see what we had in our first packages, which we all implement them, as the ambassador said, through our implementing partners. So that is the UNOPS, UN Development Program, Danish Refugee Council, Danish Church Aid, Danish Red Cross, and so forth. But when we look at the content of the packages we delivered in 22, it's plywood, which was used to sort of stuff out the windows that were blown out during the combat actions in 22. It was water pumps, and it was what we call reverse osmosis systems, because the number one priority in Mykolaiv was and still is restoring potable water supply, drinking water. But when I first came here 2 weeks ago and met with the mayor, Mr. Alexander Sienkiewicz, the thing he said that whatever he tells his the people living in Mykolaiv, they will always just respond with Alexander Fyodorovich, de voda. So where is the water, and what are you going to do about it? Because at the moment there is no stable potable water supply to Mykolaiv city, and one of the major focuses of the Danish recovery packages that we're delivering from 22 through 23 and today, that is restoring water supply, pipeline systems, water treatment plants, and so forth. Because the focus is to keep the city as a place that can be inhabited. There's no one in Ukraine who or in Mykolaiv who would want to see people start leaving the city again, because there is no stable water supply, and that is also our one of our overarching focuses. So the water issue is one thing. At the beginning, what sort of deteriorated the issue at the beginning of the invasion was that the local water supply institutions in Mykolaiv allowed salty water from the Liman, the water basically coming from the Black Sea and surrounding Mykolaiv, to go into the water pipeline system, which means that there is heavy corrosion in all pipeline systems in Mykolaiv, and there are many leaks and ruptures taking place every day. Every day, the local water supply authorities need to, on an emergency basis, go out to 20-30 different sort of places and do emergency repair of the water supply, because all the pipes are corroding. So that is something that we are helping them with. Many of these pipelines date back to, I'd even say, early Soviet time, are made of steel, and they get rusty with a very quick pace, so to speak. So that's one of the main focuses we have. Then we have another important category of our support is restoring destroyed buildings, micro-districts. That's both private housing, but it's also that, as the ambassador mentioned, it's restoring educational schools and educational facilities, the agricultural university, the University of Shipbuilding, and so forth, with a view to making the city livable. and making it an attractive place to live and have young kids. Also, since air alarms are still very frequent and attacks happen once in a while, any building, any public building require shelters so that all those who are in the building can quickly go to the shelter in case of an air alarm. And that is also one of the main things we're spending money on, since this is an ultimate requirement, which is now part of Ukrainian legislation also. But obviously, it's one can imagine that it is quite a large task to build shelters for dozens of schools and a couple of universities which will have a total capacity of thousands of students. It's a large task, and we are using almost all of our implementing partners, both the UN organizations, Danish Refugee Councils, and others are all working on shelter products. Then the next thing, there are many sort of details in all the packages that we are delivering to Mykolaiv, but one very, very critical issue is obviously power supply, energy supply, both heat and electricity. Since the Russians have been targeting Ukrainian infrastructure since autumn 22, there was and is a very large requirement for electricity generators, and now also, as we see with the Russian attacks in the beginning of this year, a very large requirement for also restoring heat supply. And much of this at the beginning in 22, one of the main things that we were spending money on was electricity or diesel generators producing electricity. So much that at a certain point it was difficult to ensure that the procurement was happening effectively and that we were not producing sort of over. At some point we simply could not bring enough generators into Ukraine to sort of satisfy the supply, and consequently the price went up, which was something that required some clearing. Not only among our implementing partners, but in Ukraine in its entirety. But obviously you can't feed a city with diesel generators alone. So in 23, we started focusing on building energy supply for the local energy authorities, the heat institutions, and the electricity suppliers. So that includes providing so-called cogeneration plants, which produce both heat and electricity, and making sure that at least critical infrastructure in Mykolaiv can work during the winter. So that's one of the main focuses right now, where we are quite pressed for time, since you are probably aware that the energy system in Ukraine is quite devastated following the attacks that have taken place in the last recent couple of months. So I would just like to probably finish off with just listing a number of the issues we have that require our active engagement from the office in Mykolaiv and broadly also on a steering committee level. One thing is that we have many implementing partners working in Mykolaiv, in Ukraine in general, but also in Mykolaiv in particular. So we have many UN organizations, many Danish international NGOs, and so forth, which all, so since there are so many money flowing into Mykolaiv from not only from Denmark but also from other countries, a certain amount of deconfliction is necessary, while both ensuring that we don't buy the same thing, but also ensuring that everything is closely coordinated with the city administration and the regional administration. So that's one of the main tasks we have. Next is that, as you probably may know, on the 18th of May, The new mobilization law was passed, or it wasn't passed. It was validated. It started working from the 18th of May, which means that in a number of areas we see now a lack of availability of workforce because many people are being mobilized to the Ukrainian armed forces. And especially interesting for the armed forces are obviously people with a technical background, engineers, mechanics, and so forth. And those are the same people that we use to make projects in Mykolaiv. So there is a constant, political level consideration about how to use workforce in a logical way, because obviously the war effort is of overarching importance, but at the same time we need to keep Ukraine and Mykolaiv livable. So that's an issue that basically all the organizations working in organizations and international partners working in Ukraine are currently facing. That is, where do we find the workers to do the jobs in the rear end of the battle, so to speak. And then as Ole has already mentioned, the corruption and integrity part of things. Obviously, Ukraine still doesn't score well on the Transparency International rating of transparency and perceived corruption. We haven't seen on the studies we've done both with the Danish military donations and with the sort of civil sector donations we have provided. We haven't seen any corruption cases so far, but it's obviously something that requires a lot of attention. And one of the reasons why the Danish-led European Union Anti-Corruption Initiative, EUAC, in Ukraine is a very important partner for the Mykolaiv recovery program. And as Ole said, they have an advisor sitting right next to the mayor in Mykolaiv and providing guidance. On a personal note, I can say that it's my impression that sometimes in Ukraine, corruption and let's say incompetence are sometimes confused. That people are not necessarily corrupt. They might just not be able. They might not have the necessary training to do some of the procurements, to conduct the procurement process that they're involved in a transparent manner, because these are new things to Ukraine also, which have only been initiated since the Maidan revolution, and very often there is a lack of skilled personnel to carry out many of the sort of sensitive works related to procurement. So I know that's the position of the integrity advisors also, that guidance is just as important as monitoring and providing advice. Yes, so as I said, we can say that the Mykolaiv recovery effort has been taking place in 3 stages. So the first one was very much in 22, the emergency part with plywood and generators and restoring water supply and so forth. 23, we went on sort of to a new phase where we develop larger projects, do more feasibility studies of some of the projects that are related to energy infrastructure in particular, and the school system. And in 24, we are moving ahead to a more sort of programmed, long perspective effort in Mykolaiv, where I'm sure Jesper in a minute will talk about the master plan and the sort of long time planning that is now taking place, because everything in Ukraine, as you know, has been very much urgent, emergency, with very little time for planning, while we are now trying to move into a new phase with a longer perspective on things, since we expect to be in Ukraine for a long time. Yes, that was probably everything from me. I'm ready to take all your questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Jakob. Thank you for this. Great to hear from you on the ground in Mykolaiv, and good to hear about the work that you do. Important work, interesting work, of course. Do we have any questions for Jakob? Remember, he's on the ground in Mykolaiv speaking to us right now, so here's an opportunity to get fresh impressions and assessments from what is happening. Everything seems to be perfectly clear, Jakob, so thank you for this. We'll go to our auditorium now. Jesper is here. He'll present the master plan that you just advertised, and whatever else he has brought to us for us today. So thank you for now to Ole Ebjerg Mikkelsen and to Jesper Thorel Hansen, and then we'll go to Jesper Krag Petersen. And Jesper is a very experienced consultant doing project work in different parts of the world, including now Ukraine, including now Mykolaiv. And we'll have the master plan, as was just advertised, but also an insight into some of the projects that is happening right now. So Jesper, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Does it work? This one? It works? The mic, it works. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. Thank you very much, Flemming, for the nice words, for the introduction. And also thank you to both Ole and also you, Jakob. We haven't met yet, Jakob and I, offline, face to face. But we did have a telephone conversation yesterday before this meeting. And I will have to say honestly, also after having listened to this presentation of yours, Jakob, that I look very much forward to meeting with you in Mykolaiv in the first week of July, when I will be in Mykolaiv once again. My name is Jesper Krag Petersen. I'm from Kyiv, responsible for our project portfolio in Ukraine, and acting as project director, as a project manager on different projects. And the project I will focus on today, that is the project we have been carrying out since I would say July, August last year on Mykolaiv Master Plan. And this we have been doing on behalf of Danish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And I'm happy that you, Anne Kahl from EUN in the Danish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, that you are with us today. But allow me, before entering into the master plan, to say that I am very happy being here. I was happy when I received this invitation from you, Flemming. The reason being that I think that DIIS has a role to play in the future when it comes to rebuilding Ukraine. Why? Because researchers here may contribute to improve our common understanding of what we are doing and how we may improve what we are doing, so as to ensure that Ukraine, not only Mykolaiv, but Ukraine as a country, will develop and will become, by the end, a prosperous member of the EU. I think it's very important that you can play a role which we can't play, which a ministry can't play, which a utility in Denmark, a municipality in Denmark, Aalborg, for example, can't play. You have your role to play, and it is extremely important, I think. Good. Master plan in Mykolaiv. We have been working on this, as I said, for a year, and we have been working closely together with an Italian company named OneWorks. And the slides I will show to you now, or I will not show you all the slides, but some of the slides I show you, they constitute a part of the slides we will use on the 4th of July when we together, COVI One Works in Mykolaiv, and under the leadership of Alexander Senkevich, the mayor of Mykolaiv, will have a high-level event aimed at showcasing what we have been doing on the master plan. So you are here, you are invited into the cockpit, so to say. It's still work in progress, many of the slides, but two. And for that reason, I will not share the slides with you now, but when they have been finalized, I will send them to you, the whole presentation I will send to you, Flemming, and then you can share the slides with anyone who signed up for this event. I have two slides here for beginning, which are not slides that we have prepared together with One Works. But these two slides, they say in a nutshell what the work of ours, what the work of Denmark, of COVI, with regard to the master plan has been about. So, it's important saying, as already mentioned, that the master plan, it was requested by Mykolaiv City Council. It was not Denmark who said to Mykolaiv, there's a need for a master plan. It was Mykolaiv who said we would like to have a master plan. And why? As mentioned several times by the mayor, there are different, you can say, purposes. One is to say to the people, inhabitants of Mykolaiv, yes, we know what you're thinking, we care. We know there's a problem with drinking water. And we know there's a need for a solution which is also beyond an emergency solution. Osmosis, reverse osmosis units or plants, that's fine, but it's not a long-lasting solution. We know what you're saying. We have heard you. Another important purpose is to make use of this master plan as a compass for municipal investments, to find out what should be the sequence, what is important, how are different projects linked together. Again, water supply is a good example, and I will come back to that, I think, several times, because we are moving fairly fast on this issue, exactly because of the importance of safe drinking water to the population. And here we have different projects that all address water supply. There's something about water treatment, there may be pipes, there may be water intakes from river, and so on. And all these, they have to be looked at as a whole, and you need to make you need to prioritize these investments and find out about the sequence. And last but not least, such a master plan can also be used to attract investors. And I say here both public and private, but honestly speaking, in the short term, we are mainly talking about so-called international financial institutions and donors. And it is already so, I will say, that this master plan is being used by selected IFIs for investment decision making. And talk about European Investment Bank, EBRD, and NEFCO. You can also say a facility like the Danish DIIS or DANIDA. Time horizon of the master plan is 2050. It does not mean that all projects they have to be finalized or will be finalized by the end of the 40s. No, if we take again water supply, if it is possible to secure safe drinking water for population of Mykolaiv 24/7 by 27 or 28, then we will do it. We will do it as soon as possible. But the horizon is 2050, where we would like to be in 2050. And then the work on this master plan has been a joint effort. And here, Mykolaiv City, one works are highlighted. I will also say that we have been working intensively and are working intensively with the utilities in the city. So we are talking about the water company. We are talking about the 2 heat companies. We are talking about waste companies. So there are different companies with whom we have been working intensively. And when we have been working on the master plan, our contribution to the master plan, Denmark's contribution, COVID's contribution, it has to do with 3 sectors: water, energy, and solid waste. And talking about energy, it is district heating or heat. It is power, and then it is renewable energy sources. And here focus is on solar energy, wind energy, and biomass or bioenergy. And here it says to be finalized in February 24, was a bit optimistic. It will be finalized. Basically it has been finalized. It will now be presented 4th of July in Mykolaiv, and then we enter a new phase where it's not about doing master plan, but it's about implementing projects, in particular investment projects included in the master plan. It's also about the master plan and the work of ours. I will highlight here these 2 overarching cross-cutting issues, because in all what we have been doing, we have been looking at green transition and EU accession. What does it mean? It means that when we do when we focus on the district heating in the future, then it's not about some emergency needs, but it's about ensuring that the heat is produced in a way which is green and which is also aligned with the EU requirements, with the EU acquis. So, and that goes for all sectors, also waste and water. What are the EU requirements? We are right now waiting and also crossing our fingers for Brussels, because it is the hope, not only for us but also for Ukraine and for people in Mykolaiv, that the EU acquis will be opened this month, in next week or the week after, and that is to say that then real negotiations will start between Brussels and Kyiv on EU accession. And some of the chapters to be opened first will be the chapter on environment, which includes or addresses, among others, water and waste, and it will be the chapter on energy. And one of the things we will do at first, and I'm sure they will do it also in Mykolaiv, in Kyiv, that is to read these chapters when they're being opened in Brussels. And then key deliverables. The whole approach has been, in fact, very simple, I would say, and it means also it has been fairly easy to communicate what we have been doing. So it is about saying, what is the vision? Where we would like to be in 2050, taking into consideration also EU requirements. Okay, that's the vision. And then to make a description of an analysis of existing situation. Where are we? What are the challenges? Because we need to remember all the time when working in Ukraine, be Mykolaiv, be it Chernivtsi or Chernihiv, doesn't matter, that situation was not good either in December or 21. Also in December 21, there were problems with the drinking water in Mykolaiv city. There were no access to safe drinking water 24/7 in December 21. And the city had to rely on only one raw water resource, which is not secure for the city and the inhabitants. So it is really not about going back to just to build back to December 21, and that's why we all the time say building back better and greener. That is, you hear that also in Berlin these days. But we have this. We have the vision, and then we have existing situation, description of that, and then the question is how to move from A to B, how to come from existing situation to the vision in 2050, and that is the roadmap. What this is about, to say, okay, in order to do that, we need to, among others, and which is important, we need to carry out this priority investment program, as we call it, consisting of different investment projects and what we call enabling projects. Yes, and transparency, I think a key feature of the work we have been doing on the master plan, and generally speaking, a key feature of what is sometimes in the press, as mentioned also by Ole, called the Danish model for rebuilding or assistance to rebuilding in Ukraine. That is transparency. That we are very, very open about what we are doing, so that others can stand on the shoulders of what we have been doing. So, in connection with the master plan, we have had so-called sounding boards for these 3 sectors, and there have been 4 meetings for each of these sectors or sector work, and before each meeting, all participants or invitees, they have received a document beforehand, and at the meeting they have made comments to the document. It could be the vision paper or existing situation or roadmap, and it has been an open party. Anyone interested in joining the sounding boards have been allowed to join the sounding boards. People, experts from Mykolaiv, yes, from different institutions. People from Kyiv, for example, Anna Samaseva and her team in the State Agency for Energy Efficiency, they joined the sounding board on energy. Fine. People in Denmark, different people from ministries, agencies, municipalities, utilities, consultancy companies, all were allowed to join these sounding boards. And then we reached out to these IFIs also, and they also joined the sounding boards. They were also invited to comment on how to present the investment projects, how to do this priority investment program. And then I say others, and it was a hope for a long time that would be also something that we could say when it comes to transparency, and now we can say it. All documents prepared by COVID in connection with the preparation of the Mykolaiv master plan, they will be made public available on the Mykolaiv City Council websites, or a separate website to be opened and managed by the Mykolaiv City Council, so that all will have free access to documents we have prepared. It may be a student at the University of Copenhagen or at a gymnasium in Aalborg. It may be a student in Mykolaiv, or it may be in Luxembourg, the EIB. I think that is an important feature. Now, time is running, and I will now start showing lots of slides, and some of them I will not pay that much attention to. Here we are talking about the project team. This is for One Works. If we go to COVID, the work we have been doing, we have been working together with the 4 partners, I would say. Bioenergy, or it is also called the Renewable Energy Agency, a think tank led by Georgi Gilitucha, whom some of you may know, Kowi Polska. Then we have wind energy, Ukrainian Wind Energy Association, and we have a Danish utility, Vandcenter Syd in Odense. This slide is not, I will not go into detail here, but we have been working a lot together with OneWorks on demographics. And it is so when you do a planning of, for example, water supply in future, or you need to look at the district heating needs in future, how to move forward, then it means a lot whether the population is 500,000 as it was in Mykolaiv just before the war, or it is 250,000 as it was before Kherson was liberated. Now it is about 400,000 because many people from Kherson, they have moved to Mykolaiv. But what will it be in the future? That is, that is to be discussed. And making these assessments is extremely difficult, and you need to be clear on your assumptions. This is just a map showing that we have. What I will use it for here is simply to say that the city consists of 4 districts. Centralny, Inhulski, Zavodsky, and Karabelny. And much of the work you will hear about also when it comes to reconstruction is being carried out in one of these districts or in all of these together. Damage assessment, we have been looking at damages made during the war, and I think the overall message here is that yes, there are damages in Mykolaiv. As mentioned by Jakob, Russian army was very close to the city, and it was attacked. But compared to other cities, it is not that much. And when we look at demolition waste and the possibility of using demolition waste and making use of experience or lessons learned from the tsunami and from the wars in Western Balkan in the 90s, then it's not so that we do have amounts that can justify big investments into sorting, processing, and use of demolition waste for example, construction of roads, bridges, new houses. And this is this recycling potential, which is in fact fairly limited when it comes to construction waste. This slide is simply to say that there are these chapters in the EU acquis. That is what I want to use this for. There are several chapters of interest to the master plan to rebuilding Ukraine. And it's not only, but it's an example to make use of plastic pipes instead of steel pipes, as mentioned by Jakob. And of course, it can also, all this can be used when doing emergency work. Then one can have a look or a view to what are the long-term needs, taking into consideration again EU requirements, for example. This is a slide which it tries saying what are the most important issues if we are talking about urban rebirth of the city. Again, I will not go through it in detail, that time doesn't allow, but I would like to highlight this one. Because as it is now, people in Mykolaiv, they have very, very, very limited access to the water. There are lots of shipyards, and there are harbors, for sunflower oil or whatever, and many of there are in all 10 such locations, and it means that people do not have access to water. There are a few a kilometer or two, but it's very, very limited. So it is a major issue, we think, when talking about how to change the city in the future. That is to open this riverfront. Yeah, and it's about utilities and work of utilities. The map here, this map, it illustrates a project that we are currently working on, talking about water supply, and that is to make water supply sustainable. And this project will require that, yes, it's fine to take water from Dnipro River. It's close to Kherson, the water intake here. Kherson is down here. It's fine when it is possible doing this. It will be an important raw water source once again. Before the war, it was the only raw water resource. And this is a 70 kilometer long main we have here, or pipe. But it's not possible to do this now, and even if the war stopped tomorrow or this afternoon, it wouldn't be possible for a long time to do repair here of the main and of the pumping station. Why? Because there are that many mines, and these mines, they are located in this, it's about 20 kilometer long area, and 10-15 meters on each side of the pipe. And these mines, they have been placed with a distance from each other of 15 to 20 centimeters. It will take a long time to get rid of these mines. So what we propose, what we have been discussing instead, is to have a new water intake north of Novo Odessa, and there are several investments linked with that: water intake treatment plant, pipe, and so on and so on. This whole investment package, as we call it, it amounts to about 350 million euros, and we are right now discussing this together with EIB, Danish government, and the city, of course, the State Agency for Restoration, the Ministry of Infrastructure in Ukraine, and then some other IFIs, especially EBRD. And hopefully, it's my biggest hope for this year, then we will have an agreement on such a financing arrangement regarding water supply this year, the sooner the better, so that we can actually secure safe drinking water to population of Mykolaiv by 27. This is what our what the analysis we have carried out says. This, this is another important issue, talking about the city and what it should look like, and that is that there is a bridge. Today there is a bridge here. Here it is, this one, and it goes directly into the center. It means that all the heavy traffic coming from Odessa or coming from Kyiv or Kryvyi Rih, it goes through the city, and there is simply a need to get rid of this bridge and build a new bridge. Period. Then we have, for each of the three sectors, water, energy, waste, we have been working on this, providing input to the master plan. And I will go through only briefly what we have been doing on water. There are also slides for energy and waste, but these I will not show. But for water, yes, we have said what is the vision for 2050. What should it look like? And this is based on discussions with the members of the city council, with the members of the water company, and others. SDG integration, compliance with EC directives, active leakage control and asset management, and so on. And then existing situation, here highlighted the most important aspects only, but that is this reliance on one raw water resource only from Dnipro. I showed it on the map. And then we had a water infrastructure which was simply deteriorated. Water, what we call non-revenue water, and that is water that is not being sold to end users. This non-revenue water, it amounts in Denmark, and now I know we are looking at a best practice. In Denmark, it amounts to 6-7%. These are the leakages in the system. In Mykolaiv, before the war, it was a bit above 20%. Now it is close to 60%. Because of the war, because of damages and so on. So there, and it is so that when you look at it's not only in fact water infrastructure. I would say it is all infrastructure in the former Soviet Union. Then you will see that much of this infrastructure, be it in water, be it in energy, be it in transport, it dates back to the 70s. Because the 70s was a period which was excellent seen from a Soviet point of view. Because at that time we had the oil crisis. We had two here in the West, but it meant that the Soviet Union had lots of revenues, and these revenues were used for a lot of infrastructure work, in municipal infrastructure especially. So you will see wherever you are that you have pipes, you have boiler houses that date back to the 70s or early 80s. And then there's the wastewater. The wastewater treatment capacity is extremely low. And it is a big challenge for many reasons, also because to do something about wastewater is extremely expensive. We are talking about hundreds of million of euros to do a wastewater treatment plant. Then we have developed this priority investment program, and in connection with that also investment packages. And in water we have in all we have some investment projects and split into short-term, mid-term, long-term. Short-term before 2030, mid-term before 2040, and long-term before 2050 to be finalized. And then we have also developed some enabling projects, we call them. And that is because we know very well that reconstruction, rebuilding is not only about pipes or reverse osmosis units or plants or whatever. It is also about the whole legal and regulatory framework. It is about skills upgrading. It's about many issues that are not closely linked with an infrastructure project. Tax also, tariff setting, tariff policy. And we have, for this reason, we have included in priority investment programs some enabling projects. And one of these, that is, for example, to have a hotline between Mykolaiv Water Company and a Danish water utility, so that they can work together and call each other whenever there are some questions. And then investment packages, in some cases we have, as I showed you about this new water, this project from Novo Odessa and down to Mykolaiv, this investment package. Here we are talking about a package consisting of different selected projects, in this case 6 investment projects, that in fact serve the same purpose or have the same objective. Yes, and here are some examples on investment projects, enabling projects. I will not repeat an investment package also. I will not repeat this. All this I will skip. It's about energy, and then we come to waste. There's a big problem with landfill. And I want to go to the last slide, in fact. How do I do that easily? Because I have one last slide that I would like to show you. If I can you? The very last one. That's fast, yeah. Because I would like to say a few words about the this one. I would like to say a few words about the challenges as I see them. This is something I could speak a lot about, and the reason being that is in fact what is on the top of my mind right now, all the challenges, and there are lots of challenges. One reason I liked Jakob's presentation was that he touched upon also some of the challenges that I see. But it is one challenge is to establish these partnerships that really build on mutual trust, and that is government to government, that is business to business, and it's government to municipality and other partnerships. To have this mutual trust, where you can also disagree, where you can have the difficult discussions, hard discussions, and be honest to each other, especially when you are in a closed room. That's extremely important to aim at building up such a partnership, but it's not an easy task. It takes time. And then there's this cooperation among IFIs and donors. I'm that old that I remember very well what happened in the 90s after the dissolution of Soviet Union, and it was a circus, I would say, in the former Soviet Union, and then it became even bigger because of the enlargement of European Union and the new EU member states and work there. And the circus was basically about that there were, let me put it this way, there were lots of funds on one side, a demand which was extremely big, and there was a deficit or lack of good projects and good experts, good consultants. And at the same time, to make the triangle full, then the IFI's donors, they did not cooperate. They had their own agendas, wanted to brand themselves or whatever, and they didn't cooperate. So there were many examples of waste of money due to lack of coordination, which is simply a pity. The third one, that is the ability to maneuver in a period of changes, I call it. And Jakob mentioned the Mobilization Act. It really hurts when we speak with the utilities in Mykolaiv, and we hear about their construction works where they replace pipes or boilers or whatever. Then a major issue, that is in fact that they lack people. Men, they disappear. They hide. Maybe they go to Odessa, to an aunt, or to the countryside, and they stay at home simply to avoid being mobilized. Tax collection, I will also say, it has been a big issue that tax collection rules have been changed so that the municipality does not collect and get the money, but it all goes via Kyiv and then back as part of the negotiation process. As a result, all municipalities, not only Mykolaiv, they have had to reduce their budgets drastically for 24. And then we have all these organizational changes. And now we have heard about Kubrakov, the former minister of Ministry of Infrastructure. And we have also seen that the head of State Agency for Restoration, he has also been laid off. And in fact, he is very open right now in the media, in the Ukrainian media, criticizing this step. And in Berlin these days, I have not been there, but I have heard that it is on the top of the agenda what happened there in Ministry of Infrastructure, in the State Agency for Restoration, who will be appointed as new heads or ministers of these, and what are the implications for rebuilding? Will there be one ministry, or will there again be two different ministries? It's all up in the air, but to be able also to maneuver in such a situation and find out, reaching out to the right stakeholders, it is quite challenging. Avoid duplications, yes. Agreement on procurement rules. One of the big issues we have on developing this 350 million euro investment package for water supply, it has exactly to do with procurement rules. EIB, EBRD, they say we want to stick to international procurement rules, whereas State Agency on Restoration says they want to make use of ProSoro, Ukrainian procurement rules. Another issue also that is about environmental impact assessment. Should one carry out environmental impact assessment, which will delay for example, the construction of the pipe? It's a 60-kilometer long pipe from Novo Odessa down to Mykolaiv. Should one do such environmental, maybe a light environmental impact assessment or not? EIB says yes, we need that, because we have 10,000 people along this future pipe that have to be moved, and there are some environmental impacts as well. Whereas Kyiv hesitates a little; they would like to move forward very fast. Fully understandable. No one to blame. And then agreements on supervision and monitoring, and talking about corruption. That is where I see the corruption coming in, and that is when we prepare the tender documents. We assist the utility or municipality, for example, also Mykolaiv, in preparing tender documents and to do the tender, be it ProSoro or international tender. Fine. Then we have some bids, and that is where the whole then a new phase starts, because that is where we need to be very much aware. Do we have sufficient bids, or are there some agreements being made behind the doors? And when we then have made an evaluation and let's say a contract with a contractor has been signed, this contractor, is it will this contractor act in a way which is in line with good governance or integrity principles? So, and to have firm agreements on this upfront with the beneficiary and with the client is extremely important to avoid corruption or to mitigate corruption. And then I have this last bullet because I honestly think that the major vehicle we have when it comes to address all the challenges we see, be it duplications, be it corruption, that is transparency. If we can be transparent about what we are doing, then we at least do a little to minimize the risk of duplications and to minimize the the play or to make the playing field for corruption a bit smaller. So transparency is, I think, extremely important. Thanks. It was a bit long, I know, but I hope you excuse. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Jesper. Thank you. That was excellent. Gave us a really good overview and of course introduction also in some ways to some of the more specific works that you do. Thank you for that. Jesper has time before he has to leave. He has time for a few questions. So if anyone in the audience would like to know more about what is happening and really tap into the knowledge that Jesper has here today to share with us. Anyone? Jakob, I think, is also still online. Jakob, do you hear me?
I am online, yes.
Yeah. So if we just leave Jesper on the side for a second, someone has thought of a question for you. So please, Håvard.
Hello. It's very refreshing for those of us who is so used to just hear about all the troubles and research all the trouble going on in the occupied territories to hear your story about actually initiatives to help make things better again. If I understand you correctly, you also have taken patronage over Mykolaiv region, the municipality outside the city borders. So I'd like to hear a bit more about that. The ecological restoration and restoration of the agricultural sector, perhaps, or just the nature around there. Is undetonated bombs and shells and drone wreckage, etc. Is that a major issue in Mykolaiv region? And how do you work to deal with that? And what are your visions for future work in that regard?
Yes, thank you for the question. I know that the ambassador is also still online, so he might tip in. But just to address what you're saying, yes, we are taking care about both Mykolaiv city and Mykolaiv region, oblast. So that means that we have our two main partners on the Ukrainian side is Mr. Vitaly Kim as the governor of Mykolaiv region, and then Alexander Senkevich as the mayor of Mykolaiv city. And as the ambassador also mentioned in his presentation, we have many activities happening outside of the city. We are trying to more or less divide 50-50 between Mykolaiv city and Mykolaiv region. So many of the items we buy, both school buses and trucks and laying out water pipes and so forth, they are going out to the so-called hromadas, smaller communities in the countryside, so to speak. And the project in Snihorivka with the tomato paste producer is also obviously in the Mykolaiv region. Now, in terms of agriculture, obviously one of the main obstacles at the moment is demining, and that's why we are also spending money on both demining surveys and mine awareness, and that mainly something that's happening through Danish Church Aid and Danish Refugee Councils, which both have many years of experience in this field. There are certain regulatory issues related to demining, humanitarian demining in Ukraine. Formally, it's only the State Emergency Service, the DSNS, who's allowed to do the actual sort of detonation of unexploded devices and other things. But international partners are allowed to do a certain amount of work as well, identifying and doing surveys of contaminated areas. The whole demining the overall demining project in Ukraine is very much considered to be an economical issue, and that's why it's headed by the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Economy. and they are in charge of identifying which areas, and we are mainly thinking about agricultural areas which should be given priority when it comes to demining. So obviously we are taking their guidance on this issue, and the issue of contaminated areas is very relevant for Mykolaiv Oblast as in whole. I hope that was more or less the answer to your question.
Thank you. Mr. Ambassador, would you like to add anything to this?
Just a few comments, and totally subscribe to what Jakob just said, that we are indeed trying to have a balance between the city of Mykolaiv, which is kind of a magnet as the big city in this region, and the Omadas, the communities that are further away. And we have also been trying to stimulate economic activities in those areas. For instance, in the western community of Vozhnosensk, a town twinning arrangement has been made with the western Danish community, Ikast, which is a textile, which is in the textile heartland of Denmark, and this is also the case in Vozhnosensk. So we're trying to stimulate economic activities. For instance, sub-suppliers in Vozhnosensk who can work with companies in Denmark and in Ikast. We're also trying in the field of agriculture to get some of the Danish companies. There are about 100 Danish companies operating in Ukraine. They're mainly in western Ukraine, around Lviv, Ivano-Frankivsk, and other western cities, and here in Kyiv as well. And we're trying to work with them to encourage them to find sub-suppliers in Mykolaiv. And I'm just back from a trip to western Ukraine, and there's the second biggest pork producer in Ukraine is actually a Danish company called Good Belly, and they will now look into whether they can do contract production in Mykolaiv, in the Mykolaiv region, because this will create jobs, it will create opportunities. So we're looking at very concrete and tangible things to do. And the good thing is that at the embassy we also have an agricultural advisor. I think the only diplomat in Kyiv who's actually a farmer by profession, and he has been doing a lot in Mykolaiv to reach out to the local agricultural stakeholders. Right. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We have another question from the audience. Tom?
Thank you, Flemming. My name is Tom Rosette from the Norwegian Defence University College. Thank you for the good presentations. And I want to commemorate Denmark for their good support to Ukraine on several issues, not least weapon support without shouting too much out for it, on it, and on other economic support. And this support in Mykolaiv is excellent initiative as well. What my question is on the risks. You mentioned risks, both the ambassador and others, I think. So is that finances? Is that the dynamics of war? Please elaborate. Thank you.
I'm sure that both Ole, Ebia, and Jakob, they also have some comments to this question, which is very well received. Allow me to say a few words about the risks. Yes, there are many risks involved. I think, however, very often in the public in the West, the risks that are the most important risks, in my opinion, they are not on the agenda, but other risks are. I would say that it is not a major risk in Mykolaiv, for example, to do construction works. If you know that you need to replace these pipes, or you need to do something with this boiler house which has been destroyed, or you need to upgrade a boiler house, or you need to do some construction works. It is possible, and there's no major risk, I would say. And the reason simply being that it is a war. I have tried being in many war situations. When I was a correspondent for Danish newspaper Information during last years of Soviet Union, traveling around in Chechnya, in Transnistria, and so on. What is characteristic about this war situation is that the enemy is not sitting next to you in the cafe. The enemy is not coming into the door with a Kalashnikov. The enemy is up there, and you have your alerts and so on, and you know where to go. And if you if you go there, many people they don't, and that's a problem. But if you go there, then you are safe, I would say. So that is not the major risk to do the construction. You can do that, and when we go to the western part of Ukraine, it is more or less business as usual. We work right now a lot in Chernivtsi and Lviv. It is more or less business as usual as before the war, talking about construction works. But the major risk, that is about some of the issues we have discussed, lack of coordination. It's also corruption when it comes to tendering process and what happens afterwards. And then, in my opinion, a major risk, but I'm also economist, but a major risk is that we will be able, together with Ukrainians, as a world community, to secure funding for the capex, for the capital expenditure, for all the investments. But there will be no funding, not sufficient funding for all the operational expenditures that will come during the next 5, 10, 20, 30 years. So we will have some, as we call them sometimes, white elephants. That is a real risk. So there are risks, but I think very often we are talking about risks that are not, in my opinion, the most important risks, in the long term at least.
Mm-hmm. Would anyone like to comment from either Kyiv or Mykolaiv, please?
Yeah, I can maybe just add from Kyiv that yes, indeed, there is first of all, I should thank for the kind words about what Denmark is doing in Ukraine. I'm pretty sure that I have colleagues in Copenhagen listening in on this. If not, I will make sure that your comments will be transmitted. And yes, indeed, there are huge risks, and this is probably the reason why this was not an easy decision, and there's not been an easy decision for other countries, and it's probably why a number of other countries have declined this request to assume a patronage for a frontline city. And what are the risks? There are obvious military risks. The Russians are pretty close, even though the front line has moved. There are political risks. Many things can happen, both at the local level, the central level. We don't know, and then there is the risk of corruption, as I mentioned. These are probably when I'm thinking of the discussions that were ongoing back in 2022. These were the major risks that were pointed at, and why some were saying, "Look, this is way too risky. We cannot do this because what if?" But again, political leadership is needed, and this I think is what Denmark has been trying to do in a number of areas, both when it comes to defense equipment, which is by far the bulk of what we're doing in Ukraine, but also in the civilian support, as we've seen in Mykolaiv. So it's a risk that Ukrainians are facing as well. We are sharing the risk, and sometimes the risk is of such a nature that it's not possible for private institutions like private lenders to assume it, and that's why, as I mentioned, in the case of export credits, the Danish Export Credit Agency had to have a special facility backed by the state because it's not bankable. It's a risk that if something happens, it will be devastating. So that's why states will have to step in some of those cases, and then face the risks together with our Ukrainian partners.
Yeah, Jakob?
Yes, if I could just chip in also. We all have a lot to say with it, and I have something as well. So obviously in terms of the security risks, the risk related to the war effort, and I noticed you're coming from the Norwegian Defense College, and say hi to all your your colleagues. We wouldn't be able to do F-16 without you. So we have a very good relation with our Norwegian colleagues here in Ukraine also. On the military part of things, I would like to point out that the Ukrainian Security Service, SBU, has been assigned very extensive authorities in relation to the martial law, which was enforced after the invasion. So it is generally not, as Jesper said, I'm never concerned about walking around in Mykolaiv. So the physical risk, as we know it from the Middle East, is not something that we sense in Ukraine in the same way. Obviously, things fall from the sky once in a while, but that's something that you can mitigate by following procedures and going into shelter whenever there's an alarm. In terms, I'd like to join what Jesper was saying about the long-term planning capital expenditures, where I think that there are some structural risks we are facing in Ukraine, which is mainly related to Ukrainian governance. So I'll give two examples. First one is now when we are building up capacities in the energy and water supply sectors, we face issues related to how these government institutions make revenues. At least some of our Ukrainian friends may know, then drinkable water supplied to householdings in Ukraine is charged at a tariff which is 25-30% of what the water is actually worth, which means that many of the institutions are not making any money of the services they are providing. So in the long term, we're building a capacity which may not be able to keep itself afloat in the long run if on a political legislative level in Ukraine changes aren't made. The other one is related to demining, as was mentioned before. The main authority within humanitarian demining in Ukraine is the State Emergency Service. And they are, until recently, they were the only, along with the Ukrainian Demining Service, Ukraine Demining Service, and the State Emergency Service, they were the only two institutions who were allowed to do humanitarian demining in Ukraine. And the process of certifying new actors such as the Danish NGOs or private companies and others to be able to do demining in a legal manner is a major challenge, and which is something which is moving very slowly. So these are just two examples where the risk we are facing is related to the way Ukraine is structured from a governance perspective and from a legislative perspective also.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for this. We have time for a final question. Anyone? Then perhaps I may, Jesper. I have two actually. Yeah, would you like to add? Yeah, please.
I'm not sure it is a risk, but anyway, it is something which is very high on the agenda in Mykolaiv city these weeks, months, I would say. And that is the fact that the election campaign has started in Mykolaiv. It may change, but it seems as if there will be elections for mayor next year, and that is something to be aware of also for all of us working with Mykolaiv city, that it is on the top of the agenda of not only the mayor but also the team surrounding the mayor, and that is one reason why they are pushing that much to embark on let's say concrete projects or concrete results. The sooner the better, so that they can showcase this to the population. But election campaign has already started, I would say, and it is something that is being discussed in in the administration and also outside the administration building. I will not call it a risk, but it's something to be aware of, because it's also, to some extent, a game changer.
If I may just...
I may just add,
Pastor,
I
please.
don't think that's a risk. On the contrary, that's one of the qualities of the Ukrainian democracy, that elected officials are up for election at a certain point. And I don't think that mayors in Ukraine are very different from mayors in Denmark or any other European country. Of course, they want to deliver quality services to their fellow citizens. And I think that's something that is the strength of what we're doing there. And of course, it creates a pressure on us as a donor, but I think that's good. And we'll see when it will be possible to have elections. As you might know, parliamentary elections should have been held in the fall of last year, and the presidential elections should have been held in very recently in May. But due to the state of emergency, this is not possible, and we don't know at this point in time when municipal and local elections will be held. But
Fully agree. Yeah.
Good point. Thank you. We have 2 minutes. Can I just ask you one question, Jesper? Now you presented the master plan. It aims for 2050. I also noticed from one of your slides that you have assumptions about the end of the conflict. And it says 26, 27, 28. So how do you assess this? And obviously it's important for you when you make your plans and you prioritize and so on. But how do you try to assess the end of the conflict?
Two answers. First answer is that many of the projects we are discussing right now, for example, this water supply project from Novo Odessa and down, that is something that we think, honestly speaking, all of us involved in this, including people from Mykolaiv and people from Kyiv, that can be done right now. You can start immediately, in fact. Why? Because in the Kyiv, a similar project has been carried out, now talking about the pipe, and very much similar length of the pipe. And it was carried out under ProZorro, Ukrainian procurement system, and it was carried out by the State Agency for Restoration, and it was a success. And it was finalized only this spring, so a few months ago. So that is my first answer, and my second answer is that yes, you're right. We have had this discussion about when will the war stop, because it impacts, of course, on many of the investment projects included in these PIPs, and not only in our investment projects, but also investment projects of one work, so to say, all which is overground. And what we have decided to say is that it is extremely difficult to make such a forecast, and honestly speaking, I would not. I would hesitate a lot doing that. But when we are forced to do it, then we just need to say clearly what is the assumption made, and it is our assumption that in 26, 27, 28. During the next 2 to 4 years, the war will stop. And I can add that having had these discussions, we have digged into many different analyses, also about Russian economy, by the way.
Okay, yeah, great. All right. On this relatively happy note, let me wrap up our seminar today. Let me just start by thanking Ambassador Ole Eberg Mikkelsen and, of course, Jakob Troel Hansen, respectively from Kyiv and Mykolaiv. Thank you for taking the time to join us today, give us an insight into this important topic, which we all understand now, of course, is something that we really want to mark and we really want to highlight. So thank you for this, and please stay safe where you are. And thank you, of course, also to Jesper Kauer Petersen for taking the time to sharing with us today your insights from what happens on the ground in Mykolaiv. Please join me in thanking our speakers. And I should announce now that we have a short break. We have a 30-minute break, and then we will continue in 30 minutes' time. We have a session with our Ukrainian colleagues, primarily, but not exclusively, on Russian mass subversion of temporarily occupied territory. So we'll be looking at how the Russian strategies and policies unfold in the occupied Ukrainian territory. So I hope to see you again in 30 minutes' time. There will be coffee. There will be a bit of food for you to enjoy before we reconvene in 30 minutes. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.